I kind of, someone might come into the film, I imagine that people would come into the film, they'd be thinking, right, I don't know how this film's going to work, but they're going to tease us with the creature, and then slowly, maybe towards the end, we'll see it. You know?
Right.
And I felt like, let's get that out the way straight away. You know, if it was kind of like having the money shot in a porno right at the start, and then now let's get to know each other, sort of thing.
Right. This is Dusty Wright today from merry old England, here in New York City.
Okay.
Gareth Edwards. Gareth, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Monsters. Great project, great movie. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How did you get this thing from point A to point Z? Was it an arduous journey?
Yeah, I definitely rank it as the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. It was, I actually think at one point, if I could have pressed the button and like ejected myself from the whole project, I would have done it, but those buttons don't exist. So when you dive into something like this, like you've got to see it to the end, thankfully. And yeah, it was about, from the day I kind of approached the production company with the idea to the day we had our world premiere was pretty much a year and a half. So,
as a young person, I was way into the old studio Universal movies, The Wolfman, Frankenstein, you know, all of that growing up. How did you get bitten by the bug?
I'm trying to figure this out, and actually, I mean, I've always loved science fiction. Obviously, I'm part of that Star Wars generation that was spoon-fed it from being a child, but I actually have more of a love for 50s kind of science fiction and B-movies and things like that, and I think that began, I went on our first sort of holiday with my parents. We went to California and went to Arizona, and we pulled up, and we couldn't quite make to the town we wanted to go to, so we just pulled up in the middle of nowhere in this town in the middle of the desert, and there was a motel, and they only had one room available, so I had to sleep in the same room as my parents, and I was probably about 12 or something, and my dad had a little dial TV. You had to click the dial to get different channels,
right.
And it was black and white, and he flicked it, and The Twilight Zone started, and my dad was like, this is the best TV show ever made.
Right. How about Ray Harryhausen?
Yeah, I mean, how can you not like him? And what's weird is someone once said to me, like, because we've done this film and I did the effects myself, and someone went, oh, this is the first time anyone has ever done the effects on their own, sort of thing. And you're like, no.
Go back and...
Yeah, there's a legend. You got to look harder. Like, he's called Ray Harryhausen, and I got to meet him once.
Wow.
A friend of mine worked at the BBC, and she was interviewing him as part of this other program, and she was like, I'm going around Ray Harryhausen's house. Do you want to come?
You're like, what?
And I was like, yeah. And so I went and had to pretend I was part of the crew,
right,
to justify being there, and in the end, I obviously ended up knowing more about him than they did, and so I ended up chatting to him about people like Phil Tippett, and I was holding his Oscar, and he's got all his models everywhere, and then obviously his big inspiration was King Kong.
Sure.
And I was chatting to him, it was the week that the King Kong trailer had been released, and I was saying, oh, what do you think to Peter Jackson's new King Kong? And he was like, oh, I haven't seen it. And I suddenly thought about it and thought, oh, I've got it on my laptop.
Wow.
So it was like the most amazing thing to set up my laptop and put headphones on him and show Ray Harryhausen like Peter Jackson's King Kong, and like he loved it, but it was just like, if I ever meet Peter Jackson, I'm going to tell him that story.
That's a great story. To make that. The great thing about your movie, obviously, is that there is a real script attached. The monsters almost become secondary to the main action. You know, they kind of paint the backdrop of why they're here, and you know, the journey that they have to take, the arduous journey. Talk about developing the story. I mean, it's a very good story, and that's rare that we get those in this style of movie.
It all kind of came from various angles until it became the film, and I'd say the defining thing was, I always thought it would be a journey. Like the movie is basically like a monster movie set years down the line, where normally most monster movies end. I wanted to begin our film there. Like, I love the idea that, you know, when Godzilla gets killed, or not that that really happens in Godzilla movies, but when King Kong dies at the end of King Kong or whatever, or a big monster movie, like, who cleans that mess up? Like, do they chop up the carcass into pieces? Where do they take it? And I love all that kind of the normalcy of having to deal with something so crazy. And so I really wanted to begin, I kind of wanted the opening scene of our film to be them cleaning up after a monster attack.
Right.
And then the film begins. And it's like, well, hang on, we open our film with the big action piece,
right.
and then, which you normally think would be the end of the movie. I kind of, someone might come into the film, I imagine that people would come into the film, they'd be thinking, right, I don't know how this film's going to work, but they're going to tease us with the creature, and then slowly, maybe towards the end, we'll see it. You know?
Right, right.
And I felt like, let's get that out the way straight away. You know, if it was kind of like having the money shot in a porno right at the start, and then let's get to know each other, sort of thing.
Right.
It was, and so they basically turn up and they, and we show the creature, we're not hiding it, and then what happens is the film, you start to get introduced to these characters, and it becomes this road movie where it's basically a journey back home for these two Americans.
Yeah, which was so nice. Now, you used all locals for the other actors, correct?
Yeah, everybody in the film, apart from Scoot and Whitney, who are the two main
right.
characters, are real people that we just bumped into, and there's some amazing performances. The one that always stands out, everyone brings up, is a guy who tries to sell him a ferry ticket.
Right. Oh, that's an amazing sequence.
And he basically, we met him about 10 minutes or so before we started filming, and he's never acted in his life, and he just owns the cafe that's behind Whitney in the shot.
Right.
And we just turn up and we're like, okay, who here speaks English? And they say the guy in the taxi, and he looks a bit young. And they say, oh, the guy that works in the cafe, and he looked like he was from a spaghetti western.
Right, right.
And so, yeah, so I'm kind of like, I'm sort of hoping, my dream is that this film has a wide enough release of some sort that someone that he knows sees it and comes up to him and says, you know, you realise you're in a movie? Because he knew, obviously, we were
right,
filming
sure.
and everything, but I think, you know, we looked so small. It was just a little camera and sound man.
Just one camera?
Yeah, I mean, we had one as a backup in case it broke,
right.
but we never used it.
Unbelievable. And
so we just filmed with this camera, and I was shooting it, and the sound man was getting all the sound, and then it was just Scoot and Whitney pretty much. So it looked like, to anyone watching, it just looked like it was some student thing, and so I actually think maybe he's forgotten it even happened, you know, because we were just there for 2 or 3 hours in his life.
Right. So while you're shooting, you know, I mean, what was the production? How long was the production itself in Central America? How long were you guys down there shooting?
Yeah, we did it in 2 stages. I mean, the first stage is we went and we shot the entire film, but because we were being so opportunistic and crazy the way we were filming it, I felt like I wanted some money saved over to go back and get anything that didn't quite work. And so what we did is we shot for 6 weeks, and we went through Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and then to Texas. And we tried to do pretty much the journey the characters do in the film.
Right.
And we were all in a van whilst we were filming. We actually had 2 vans when we were moving location. And so we just chipped away at the whole movie pretty much, and then sat in the edit for probably about 4 months, getting this thing down to about 90 minutes. There was about 100 hours of this stuff. We got it down to 90 minutes, and then, so yeah.
So you're ready for the next project?
Ready to have a sleep for a bit.
Well, yes, all the press. What's the next project?
I'm trying to develop, well, basically I've got a development deal with Timur Bekmambetov, the Russian filmmaker,
mm-hmm.
and he was a big fan of monsters and very supportive, and he's essentially created a situation where he's financing or allowing me to develop my next film, and like away from the studio system, in that I'll be able to come up with the idea, the way I want to do it and everything,
right.
and then we'll see how it all pans out, but hopefully if we get to make it, you know, it'll be on our terms a lot more. And I'm not so, you know, it's kind of weird, because you make a film, the dream is, as a kid, the dream was always go to Hollywood, make a massive movie, you know, but actually, I'm kind of quite proud of the film we made where we had no money.
Right.
That I don't want to lose the elements that made the good parts of that film good. It's kind of, I never expected any of this when we made the film. You secretly hope something, it will not go unnoticed, you know.
Mm.
But you can't really expect to be sat in a room in New York with a cool poster for your movie, talking to, you know, people like you. It's like you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment if you go into your first film thinking things like that. And so I'm just really grateful and lucky that we're in this position where, I don't know what you call it, people say it's got buzz, you know, which I feel like sounds like it's an STD or something. But
Gareth, anyway, continued success, and you know, we look forward to your next project, and I hope that you get to make it on your terms.
thank you.
You're welcome. Dusty Wright, The Dusty Wright Show. We'll see you soon.